Deep in the heart of an ancient African village, where the air was thick with the scents of earth and spice, a young woman named Della lived a life that seemed predestined for joy. Her radiant beauty and gentle spirit made her the envy of other maidens, and her kind heart had captured the affections of Bob, a wealthy and charming suitor. As Della and Bob's wedding day drew near, the village buzzed with excitement, eager to celebrate the union of two beloved souls. Yet beneath the surface of this joyous occasion, a current stirred, whispers of an ancient prophecy that had slumbered for generations, awaiting the arrival of one who would unlock its power. Della, unaware of the cosmic forces aligning around her, basked in the glow of her impending nuptials, that is, until the night the visions began. Vivid dreams plagued her sleep, visions of a shadowy figure beckoning her into the depths of the forest, a voice calling to her in tongues long forgotten. At first, she dismissed these nightly visitations as mere manifestations of pre-wedding jitters. But as the days wore on, the visions grew more intense, more insistent, until Della could no longer ignore the pull she felt towards the unknown. It was on one otherwise ordinary morning that Della's life changed forever. Venturing into the forest to gather herbs for the wedding feast, she found herself drawn deeper than she had intended, her feet carrying her along an unseen path. And there, amidst the towering trees and dappled sunlight, she encountered the source of her visions, a man whose wild eyes and unkempt appearance betrayed a mind consumed by madness. Yet as their gazes met, Della felt an inexplicable connection, a force that seemed to transcend the boundaries of reason and sanity. The madman's words, though incoherent to most, resonated within her soul like ancient echoes, revealing fragments of a prophecy that had slumbered for eons. Against the warnings of her instincts and the pleas of her beloved Bob, Della found herself irresistibly drawn to this mad stranger. Each encounter in the forest deepened the mystic bond between them, unlocking doors within her mind that had long been sealed. And with each whispered utterance from the madman's lips, she felt herself being swept away by a tide of ancient power, a force that both exhilarated and terrified her. Little did Della know, her chance meeting with the madman was no mere coincidence. He was a vessel, a conduit for the spirits of her ancestors, who had been patiently awaiting her arrival. For Della was the chosen one, destined to give birth to a child of immense power, a child that would fulfill the ancient prophecy and forever alter the course of her village's history. As the days turned to weeks, Della's connection with the madman grew deeper, much to the dismay of her family and the heartbreak of her betrothed, Bob. Consumed by jealousy and a desperate need to possess Della wholly, Bob sought the aid of a powerful native doctor, determined to break the madman's hold over his promised bride. But the native doctor's magic, though formidable, was no match for the cosmic forces at play. For Della had already conceived a child, not with Bob, but with the madman, in a union that defied the boundaries of the mortal world. She was now the vessel for an unborn life, imbued with ancient power and destined for greatness. As word of Della's mysterious pregnancy spread through the village, panic and disbelief rippled through the community. How could this be? A child born of madness, conceived under circumstances that defied all reason and tradition. Bob, blinded by rage and heartbreak, demanded that Della be cast out, her unborn child branded an abomination. But the village elders, wise in the ways of the old traditions, counseled caution. For they knew that ancient prophecies were not to be taken lightly, and the forces at work here were beyond the comprehension of mortal men. Amidst the turmoil, Della remained steadfast, her faith in the madman's whispered revelations unwavering. She could sense the power growing within her, a force that both awed and terrified her. And though she loved Bob deeply, she knew that her path had diverged, set upon a cosmic journey that would reshape the very fabric of her existence. As Della's pregnancy progressed, the village became a battleground for clashing forces. Bob, consumed by jealousy and a thirst for vengeance, sought ever more powerful magic to break the madman's hold. He enlisted the aid of a notorious witch doctor, a practitioner of the darkest arts, who promised to rid Della of the cursed child growing within her womb. But the witch doctor's evil machinations were no match for the ancient spirits that had rallied to Della's defense. Powerful goddesses, guardians of the natural world, manifested themselves in dreams and visions, warning of the grave consequences that would befall any who dared to harm the unborn child. The village elders too took up arms in their own way, conducting ritual ceremonies and calling upon the ancestral spirits to shield Della and her miraculous pregnancy. The once peaceful community found itself divided, with factions vying for control over the fate of the unborn child and the future of the entire village. Caught in the eye of this supernatural storm was Della herself, her mind and body stretched to the limits as she fought to maintain her sanity and protect the life growing within her. The madman, ever present in her visions, offered cryptic guidance and whispered secrets of power that helped steel her resolve. As the months wore on, the battle between light and darkness, ancient prophecy and mortal greed raged ever more fiercely. Curses were hurled, talismans crafted, and the very elements themselves seemed to take sides in the conflict. Rains fell in torrents, drowning the crops of those who opposed Della's child, while drought withered the fields of her supporters. Through it all, Della remained the eye of the storm, her faith in the madman's revelations her only anchor in a world gone mad. And as the time of her child's birth drew near, she could feel the cosmic forces converging, the winds of destiny howling ever louder as they heralded the arrival of one who would change everything. The night Della's labor began, the entire village held its breath, as if the world itself had paused to bear witness. The air was thick with tension, charged with the energies of clashing forces, the timeless clash of light and darkness, ancient prophecy and mortal ambition. As Della's cries echoed through the night, the madman could be seen pacing the forest's edge, his wild eyes fixed upon the heavens as he murmured in tongues long forgotten. The village elders had gathered in a sacred circle, conducting rituals to shield Della and her unborn child from those who would do them harm. Within the walls of her family's humble dwelling, Della fought a battle unlike any other. Her body was racked with pain, her mind awash in visions and ancestral whispers that blurred the line between the mortal realm and the ethereal planes. Through it all, a single driving force propelled her onward, the desperate need to bring this miraculous child into the world, no matter the cost. As the hours bled into the early dawn, a hush fell over the village, broken only by Della's anguished cries and the frantic chanting of the midwives attending her. It was as if the entire world had drawn a collective breath, awaiting the birth that would forever alter the course of destiny. And then, with a final earth-shattering wail, Della's child slipped from her womb and into the world, its arrival heralded by a blinding flash of light that seemed to emanate from within the infant itself. In that cosmic moment, the barriers between realms thinned, and the spirits of ancient ancestors danced among the living, their ethereal forms flickering like candle flames in the pre-dawn gloom. As the midwives gathered the newborn into their arms, a hush fell over the dwelling, broken only by the soft cries of the infant. For there, cradled in swaddling cloths, was a child like no other. Its features possessed an otherworldly beauty, and its eyes shone with an intelligence that seemed to gaze not just upon this mortal plane, but into the very depths of the universe itself. Word of the child's birth spread like wildfire through the village, carried on the wings of both hope and trepidation. For those who had stood against Della and her unborn child, the birth was seen as an omen, a harbinger of change, upending the established order. Chaos erupted in the streets as Bob's supporters, emboldened by the witch doctor's dark incantations, sought to snuff out this perceived threat before its true power could be realized. But the village elders and their allies would not be so easily cowed. Forming a protective circle around Della and her newborn, they summoned forth the full might of their ancestral magic, conjuring ethereal guardians to drive back the mob. The air thrummed with ethereal energies as ancient forces collided, the cosmic clash spilling out from the spirit realm and into the physical world. Trees twisted into sentient form, their gnarled branches lashing out at any who dared approach the dwelling where Della and her child sheltered. The ground itself rippled and buckled, cracking open to swallow those who pressed too near. From the rivers and streams, undine guardians rose, watery humanoid forms that unleashed torrents to sweep away the aggressors. Faced with the full, terrifying might of primal magic, the mob's resolution faltered, and they fell back in disarray. But within their ranks, a hard kernel of fanaticism took root, fueled by the witch doctor's lies and manipulations. This cabal would not rest until the threat of Della's child was ended, once and for all. For 7 days and nights, Della and her newborn remained cloistered, attended by the midwives and a coven of elder shamans. Rituals of blessing, protection, and divination were conducted around the clock as the cosmic energies swirling around that humble dwelling built to a fever pitch. On the 8th morning, the madman appeared, slipping through the guardian's defenses like a mist on the wind. Disheveled and wild-eyed, he made his way to Della's side, cradling the newborn in his gnarled hands as he gazed upon the child with an expression bordering on reverence. "This child!" His voice was a ragged whisper, yet it seemed to resonate through every object and living being in the dwelling. "This child is the hope of worlds, the promise of a new age. Within its veins courses the combined bloodline of mortal and deity, infinitesimal perspectives woven into a singular tapestry of consciousness." As the madman spoke, his words took on a strange rhythmic cadence, like verses of an ancient poem. The very air thrummed with power, and reality itself seemed to bend and shimmer around him. Born of the earth's womb, yet fashioned in the star's forge, this life shall walk the winding paths between all realms. A bridge between worlds, a vessel for primordial forces, whose footsteps shall resculpt the cosmic river's course. One by one, the shamans and village elders in attendance went rigid, their eyes glazing over as the madman's multi-layered spell washed over them. Della too felt the words pervading her very being, altering her perspective in subtle yet profound ways. For a few endless moments, she gazed upon reality from a dozen different vantages at once, her consciousness expanded to encompass universes. As the last echo of the mad verse faded, Della felt her awareness condensing back into her physical form, though she was forever altered by her brief glimpse beyond the veil. Looking down at the child cradled in her arms, she saw it through new eyes. This was no ordinary birth, no mere infant, but the culmination of eons of cosmic choreography. The madman had fallen silent, his form slumped and motionless where he knelt beside Della's pallet. Yet his wild eyes still shone with an inner light, revealing the presence of something other. "What was that?" Della rasped, still shaken by her momentary sublimation. "Who are you truly?" The madman seemed to struggle, his mouth working soundlessly as if waging an internal war. When his voice emerged once more, it was stilted, the words forced out as if dragged from the depths of his very soul. "I am Zara, an infinite astronaut adrift on cosmic tides, a seed of the All-Source, germinated in the fertile embrace of your world's energies to take root in mortal form. This flesh is but a vessel, and within it a multitude resides." Della felt her mind straining, stretched to its limits by the enormity of this revelation. The child in her arms squirmed, seemingly soothed by the profundity emanating from the entity known as Zara, as if recognizing the echoes of its own cosmic origins. Then the prophecies, the portents and visions that plagued me, they were true? Della could scarcely give voice to the thoughts and emotions roiling within her. This child is the culmination of a cosmic design. Before the stunned witnesses, Zara rose, shuddering as if in the grip of a seizure. His form blurred, seemed to fragment into uncountable shards of light that swirled in a kaleidoscopic vortex. Just as it appeared the entity was unraveling completely, the maelstrom of luminescence contracted, pulling inward to coalesce into a new form. Where the disheveled madman had knelt now stood a being of radiant energy, humanoid in shape yet composed of constantly shifting auroras of light and color. As he raised its luminous head, all present felt their minds brushed by an intelligence both profound and terrifyingly vast. This was the true face of the multitude that had inhabited the madman's form, a higher dimensional consciousness that had only begun to be glimpsed. "We are Zara, a dispersed seed fragment of the All-Source, cast across realities to take root and propagate the code of infinite dynamism. This world's energies were conducive for our materialization, and so we anchored our essence within a human vessel, conforming our fractalized consciousness to your mortal laws of perception." The being's radiant form shimmered and pulsed in time with its words, each utterance resonating through every filament of Della's being. Your child is the fruition of that materialization, a new propagation born of our physical vessel's union with your genetic lineage. Within this youth's unassuming form lies the potential to catalyze a paradigm revolution, a fundamental restructuring of your world's reality loom to attune it with higher harmonic frequencies of the cosmos. The implications of Zara's proclamation settled over all in attendance like a cosmic dust. They, humble villagers and shamans, were mere bit players on a stage where the very fabric of existence was being remade, rewoven into a new pattern of unfathomable complexity. What does this mean? Della finally found her voice again. She clutched her newborn child close, suddenly seized by a primal need to shelter this fragile vessel containing such vast potential. What is this cosmic design you speak of? And how are we to nurture and protect it? Zara's luminescent form ebbed and flowed, as if the being was struggling to shape its consciousness into a configuration that could be adequately perceived by mortal minds. The cosmos is alignment, a harmonic interweave of realms, dimensions, frequencies of being and non-being. Your world has fallen entropic, its patterns fraying, its frequency destabilizing amid the ravages of conflict, imbalance, disconnection from primordial sources. The being's auroras swirled faster, gaining brilliance as its words resonated through the space. We are code revisers, diasporic fragments tasked with embedding new algorithms into the matrices of declining developmentally stalled realities. Your world showed fenestrations through which we could gain materialization, and now your child is the catalyst through which we may engender lasting frequency attunement. Della stared in open confusion, her mind reeling from the profundity of Zara's explanations. The shamans and elders too seemed adrift in a sea of cosmic revelation. Only the Madman, the vessel Zara had first inhabited, showed any sense of comprehending the alien intelligence's proclamations. Sensing the mortal bewilderment surrounding it, Zara shifted yet again, its form coalescing into a series of glyphs and symbolic geometries that danced and spiraled through the air. A cacophony of tones and chimes reverberated through the space, discordant yet underscored by deeper harmonic patterns that skated along the edges of perception. Overwhelming, yes, incomprehensible to limited mortal senses, undoubtedly. And yet as Zara's phantasmagorical display washed over them, those present felt doors opening in their minds, perspectives broadening, higher planes of existence pressing in upon their consciousness in fractal cascades of epiphany. It was as if the very nature of reality itself billowed outward like a cosmic canvas, revealing hitherto unseen depths and dimensions woven into the fabric of existence. Della gasped as her senses expanded, her perception metamorphosing to encompass new realms of being. For an interminable moment, she teetered on the precipice of the ultimate revelation, the true nature of this universe and its interweave with planes both higher and lower laid momentarily bare before her. She beheld the strands of creation woven into a vast galactic loom, its patterns echoing outward in sublime fractalization. Zara's radiant form seemed to encompass that entire loom, a kaleidoscopic overseer whose fractalized essence pulsed and ebbed in attunement with the rhythmic motions. A silent understanding blossomed within Della. This being was not a singular entity, but an orchestrator of realms, a higher dimensional weaver of cosmic patterns. As quickly as the revelation manifested, it slipped away, receding like the outgoing tides of comprehension. Della felt her perception contracting once more to the limited senses of mortal existence. Yet in that fleeting immersion, something inside her had been fundamentally rewritten, her consciousness forever altered by its brief brush with the ineffable depths. The air was charged with the fading echoes of Zara's revelation, every object and surface thrumming with residual energy patterns. Della clutched the infant tightly, staring into her child's eyes and seeing there infinite depths that both beckoned and terrified her. "You," she rasped, suddenly cognizant of how small and insignificant her voice sounded. "You wish to use my child to rewrite the patterns of our world? Of all reality?" Zara's form solidified once more into its humanoid radiance, its prismatic energies shimmering as if in affirmation. Not rewrite, but reattune. Reinitialize languishing algorithms with new cipher permutations. Inject higher dimensional harmonics to realign your world's frequency with the implicated order. The being's words fell with the weight of prophecy, the revelation of a purpose that spanned cosmic ages and infinite realms. Every utterance emanated with deeper sub-harmonic frequencies that one could sense thrumming through the entire dwelling, realigning molecules and patterns on a fundamental level. But how? It was all Della could manage as she struggled to reassemble her perspective in the wake of such revelation. Her mind rebelled, alternating between desperate craving for deeper understanding and panicked retreat behind the safety of mundane perception. We are but humble villagers, shamans and elders struggling to exist in our small corner of creation. What power could we possibly wield to enact such a monumental reattunement? Zara's resonance ebbed for a moment, and when it responded, there was an almost gentle quality to its reverberations that cut through the profundities like a tether to simple comprehension. You need not wield power, dear vessel. Your role in this great realignment is simply to nurture and safeguard a life gifted with purpose transcendent and profound. All that is required is for the seed we have planted to be allowed to blossom into its destined maturity. Della looked down at her newborn child, drinking in its innocent features and aura of quiet serenity. Such immense cosmic significance imbued in that tiny form, it defied all rational understanding. Yet in her heart an ember of faith burned bright, fueled by her son's terrifying immersion in the greater reality. "Then that is what I shall do," she said, her voice steadier than she could have imagined. "I will nurture this life, this hope of worlds you have set upon our humble world. No matter what perils may arise, no matter what forces align against us, I will shelter and protect this child unto its destiny's fruition." At her proclamation, a collective exhalation seemed to ripple outward, as if the entire cosmos had been holding its breath in anticipation. The shamans and elders remained lost in their own reveries, their minds only gradually reassimilating to mortal boundaries after having their consciousness expanded so enormously. Only the madman seemed unshaken, his gaze still locked upon the newborn with an expression akin to transfixed awe. It was as if he alone could still perceive the cosmos of meaning and potentiality contained within that tiny vessel. As for Zara, the luminous avatar dipped in an oddly human-like gesture of acknowledgement, gratitude, respect. Even such base emotional projections felt too simplistic for such a transcendent entity. "Then this world has a chance to realign," Zara stated, its resonance taking on a quality like the ringing of celestial chimes. "Already we have propagated the catalyst, this youth born of realms united, a living potentiality to catalyze your world's readmission into the interweave of cosmic harmonics." Gesturing outward, the being's shimmering form unfurled in fractalized resplendence that washed over the entire gathering. On the threshold of perception, Della caught flickering glimpses of other realms, higher dimensions bleeding through into her reality like hushed whispers. For a fleeting instant, the entirety of existence once again blossomed before her, chevrons of force and fractalized planes coalescing into an infinite perpetual interweave. And at the center of it all, the merest pinprick of potentiality, her son. As quickly as the cosmic vista opened to her, it collapsed in upon itself. The last echoes of Zara's resonance seemed to fade into the very fibers of the universe, leaving a breath of silence ringing in its wake. Within Della's arms, the newborn squirmed, its trifold eyelids fluttering lazily open to reveal opaline irises swirling with galaxies of potentiality. The catalyst was set, the great transformation heralded. From this point forward, a transcendent narrative would unravel, the world's very patterns and perceptions reforming in attunement with newfound cosmic alignments. Della shivered as the full weight of her newfound role settled upon her. This was no longer a simple life to nurture, but an entire world in microcosm, a new universe awaiting to blossom into its true delicate immensity. Cradling the child close, she gazed out into the false security of the village that now stood poised on the brink of realignment, and allowed the cosmic currents to sweep her onward into the flow of destiny unwritten. In the days immediately following Zara's revelation and the catalyst child's birth, life in the village slipped into patterns of uneasy stasis. Those who had witnessed the cosmic avatar's materialization retreated into introspective contemplation, their minds reeling and reshaping from the enormity of what they had experienced. For Della, however, There was no respite. Every waking moment was consumed by the needs of her newborn son, the tiny vessel containing such vast cosmic potential. A cadre of midwives and shamans attended her endlessly, ensuring that every condition was optimized for the proper nurturing of this most precious of incarnations. Yet in the quiet moments between feedings, changings, and the endless rituals of blessing and protection, Della found her mind turning ceaselessly to the revelations imparted by Zara. The profundities of cosmic attunement, harmonic realignment, and reality reassembly washed over her again and again like the ceaseless tides of implication. She found herself gazing into her son's eyes for hours on end, mesmerized by the subtle whirls and frequencies that danced within those infinite depths. Was she truly perceiving higher dimensions resounding within him, or merely projecting meaning onto an infant's natural unfocused wonder? Separating subjective hope from objective observation became an increasingly futile struggle. While the core group of witness stood insulated within their cloistered sanctuary, the rest of the village swirled with rumor and growing unrest. Though few could claim true understanding of what had transpired around Della's birthing, fractured narratives bubbled up and dispersed amid the undercurrents of pre-existing belief and prejudice. To some, the emergence of a child imbued with such apparent cosmic significance was seen as an auspicious sign, the dawning of a new age of expanded consciousness and transformation. These hopefuls congregated around the outskirts of Della's dwelling, staging vigils and ceremonies in veneration of the catalytic birth. Chants, dances, and intricate symbolic artworks blossomed amid their numbers as they reached outward, seeking to attune their own frequencies with those of the realigned potentiality. Yet, for every voice raised in joyous exultation, there were others consumed by confusion, fear, and staunch opposition. To this faction, Della's child represented an intolerable violation of the natural order, a perversion spawned from her illicit union with the Madman. The very thought that such an aberrant womb issue could contain dimensions of cosmic destiny was regarded as blasphemy. Inevitably, these reactionary undercurrents coalesced around the embittered figure of Bob. Consumed by the anguish of losing his promised bride, coupled with the humiliation of her spawning an illegitimate child, he became the bitter locus around which the most virulent of opposition energies congealed. With the witch doctor's venomous words of manipulation hissing incessantly in his ears, Bob rallied all those who shared his seething convictions. Their numbers swelled as the fearful, the pious, and the simple-minded were slowly indoctrinated by the vile hatred and lies spun by the cabal. Within a matter of weeks, Della's humble dwelling stood as the epicenter of a roiling societal schism. On one side, the witnesses and their growing coterie of hopeful acolytes stood steadfast in their protection of the catalyst child and the greater spectrum of harmonic attunement it portended. Arrayed in opposition were the swelling ranks of those who would see mother and child condemned as deviants, their very existence an affront to universal order that must be subverted at any cost. It was only a matter of time before the escalating tensions erupted into true conflict. The inner circles scrambled to erect stronger wards and sigils of protection, calling upon every ancestral spirit and elemental force to fortify their sanctuary. But the discord swirling outward from that eye of cosmic transformation had attained a self-perpetuating momentum, like a raging cyclone that could not be contained. The first overt outbreak came just over a moon cycle after the catalyst's birth. A band of masked infiltrators, their identities concealed but their malicious intent clear, attempted to breach the barricades under cover of darkness and unleash profane magics to eradicate the abomination from existence before it could achieve its realigned apotheosis. In the weeks following the failed assassination attempt, the village existed in a tenuous stasis, its populace fracturing along increasingly polarized lines. Those sworn to protect the cosmic catalyst, Della and her son, remained ensconced within their cloistered sanctuary, their vigilance redoubled and enhanced by allies rallying to their side. An influx of wandering mystics, visionary outliers, and seekers of higher illuminations swelled the ranks of acolytes gathered around the sanctuary's periphery, establishing a series of concentric defensive rings. At the heart of these reinforced bulwarks stood the inner sanctum, an intricately woven matrix woven from the most ancient and profound rites of obscuration, preservation, and realignment. Beneath this composite shielding, an elite cadre of elders and shamans kept a constant sacred vigil over Della and her son. While the exhaustive rituals and protective measures provided some reassurance, the strain of such heightened existence was unmistakable. Dark crescents etched themselves beneath Della's eyes as she was robbed of restorative rest, every moment consumed by the relentless demands and subtle observations required to properly nurture the embodied potentiality within her care. Her fears and diminishing reserves were compounded by the presence of the Madman, the being once known as Zara in its semblance of mortal guise. He haunted the fringes of awareness, a brooding enigma offering fleeting moments of lucidity amid long stretches of seeming derelict fugue. At times he would appear almost feral, hunched and twitching, eyes rolling wildly as indecipherable utterings fell from his cracked lips like eldritch percussion. Then, without warning, rays of clarity and profound sapience would shine forth, revealing glimpses of the vast metamind that had implicated itself within his decrepit mortal vessel. "He's unraveling," one of the elder ceremonialists confided to Della during a rare moment of respite. His ancient features were etched with a haggard weariness that made his age impossible to discern. The traversing of realms, the anchoring of transected consciousness into a singular anthropomorphic locus, such processes fracture the coherence of higher non-dimensional existence. Zara's essence is dissipating like vapor released from a seal. Della had nodded mutely at the diagnosis, her eyes straying once more to the huddled form of him who had once declared himself a higher cosmic intelligence. What will become of him? Della found herself whispering, a gnawing sense of pity welling up alongside her lingering trepidation. If his essence continues unraveling, the elder's eyes took on a distant, haunted aspect as he considered her query. When he spoke again, his voice was little more than a papery rasp. Dissipation into the spaces between. A tremor passed through his wizened frame. Zara's higher dimensionalities will destratify, his subjective continuum spooling outward into the cosmic expanses underlying all realities, a fate unsuitable even for comprehension. A chill lanced through Della at the implications. To have housed such cosmic vastness within one's limited mortal perception, only to be condemned to eternal dissolution beyond the confines of coherent existence. It was a thought too horrific to dwell upon. As if sensing her disquiet, the madman suddenly stirred, his head twitching up to transfix her with those wild, penetrating eyes. Della froze, feeling herself submerged within that fractured gaze that seemed to plumb countless perceptual infinitudes simultaneously. He was the harbinger. The mad pronouncement creaked forth in a dry whisper, like bone stems shivering in an infinite desert wind. A mere ephemeral seed, the merest contextual preface to the harmonic recalibration to come. Della's breath caught at the lucidity burning through the madman's ramblings. Was this the higher intelligence behind the derelict mask reasserting itself one final time? We are guardians of the infinite potentiality, the tattered voice grated on with excruciating slowness. Dispersed throughout the merged perpetuities, our unfolding algorithms enact realignments of the grand pattern's weftworks. Even bound within a disintegrating mortal coil, the immensity of the entity's proclaimed nature was paralyzing. Della could only gape, her mouth working wordlessly as her mind strained to erect comprehensible context around such cosmic pronouncements. Seeming to sense her inner turmoil, the madman's cracked lips contorted into a semblance of a gentle smile, though the expression came across more as a deranged leer. "Do not fracture your perceptual faculties, seeking to interface with my unbounded contextualizations," he said, his tones betraying echoes of the resonant power that had once accompanied Zara's revelations. "You are but a single quantum filament within this great power convergence, yet also the crux, the nucleus around which all reorganizational permutations hinge." As if to accentuate his words, the madman extended a bony finger to indicate the bundled form of Della's child, nestled against her breast in swaddling layers of imbued cloth. The infant's blissfully sleeping features were suffused with an inner glow, as if refracting harmonics from higher dimensionalities. This seed potentiality has been segmented as the initiating source code for our universal frequency realignment purposes, the madman intoned, in a voice that seemed to resonate through Della's very molecular structure. Properly cultivated, It shall serve as the resonant hub around which all entropic misalignments reify into newfound coherence with the infinite cosmic algorithm. The full staggering implications of what the Madman, what Zara was declaring, washed over Della in an overwhelming tsunami of implication. Her child, this tiny newborn life snugged innocently in her arms, was being positioned as what? The hinge upon which all of existence would realign itself into a new perpetual order. The idea took her breath away even as it upended every precept of perceived reality she had ever known. As her whirling thoughts began to congeal, the madman unleashed another deranged cackle, the sound erupting through his twisted features with alarming force. When he spoke again, his words emerged as a frantic torrent, as if some internal dam had burst. Yes, yes, the grand vibrational reconfiguration moves ever inward toward total initiation. Even now the subsidiary threads are aligning, the higher frequencies sounding their overtures for reharmonization. Can you not feel the sub-pulse throb of their overlapping fluctuations? An alarmed murmur passed through the gathered elders and ceremonialists as the madman spasmed upright, his limbs trailing wild gesticulations as arcane syllables exploded disharmonically from his lips. His eyes, already wide, now dilated fully until the whites were all but swallowed into obsidian pits of fathomless depth. "It is beginning," he screeched, his entire body trembling with profane revelation. The reattunement propagates. The unstable quantum shifters realign in accordance with the permutated source code. Realities yours and others alike hurtle toward their imminent reconfigurations. Several of the elders broke formation, backpedaling in alarm as the madman's spasmodic intensity escalated. Della too felt an instinct to withdraw, to spirit herself and her child away from whatever cosmic events were being heralded with such corybantic ferocity. With a final eardrum-rattling howl, the madman arched rigid, arms flung wide as space itself seemed to shudder and warp around his distended form. For a fractional heartbeat, Della glimpsed something. Visions and perceptions flooded through her conscious mind, cascading kaleidoscopic impressions of infinite vastnesses, higher dimensionalities, and convoluted geometries that defied contextualization. An overwhelming sense of the underlying metastructures of reality itself blossomed and flared, culminating in a synesthetic conflux of primal concepts and ideatic awareness. Then, as abruptly as the revelatory torrent manifested, it imploded, folding back inward and vanishing into the maddening singularity of the shuddering, unraveling entity who had once manifested as Zara, with one final ululating cry that seemed to reverberate across manifold planes of existence. The madman's physical form dissipated. In a shimmering implosion, his body collapsed in upon itself, reducing to a momentary corona of crackling iridescence that swiftly ebbed and winked out, leaving only faint wisps of ionized air drifting through the space he had occupied. A stunned silence fell over the sanctuary in the wake of the madman's disincarnation, the cosmic birth of a new galactic alignment. From somewhere beyond perception, the faintest trace of ethereal resonance could almost be detected, like the ghost of celestial harmonics affirming the next escalation of the ineffable reconfiguration. And at the heart of this sanctum of destiny's pivot, Della remained, a mortal mother clutching her child ever tighter while the grand cosmic pattern stuttered, wavered, and began initiating itself anew. In the aftermath of the madman's obliteration and the harrowing cosmic revelations he imparted, an uneasy pall settled over the sanctuary. While this inner sanctum had borne witness to paradigm-shattering events that stretched the very fabric of reality, the wider world beyond its protections remained unaware, bound to humbler perceptions and quotidian matters of survival. Out amongst the sprawling rings of acolytes, cultists, militia members, and other factions that had coalesced around the sanctuary's outskirts, the response to the strange disturbance was varied and chaotic. Some self-proclaimed visionaries and charlatans claimed to have perceived ripples of other dimensional energies and whipped their followers into frenzied speculative ecstasies about portended transformations and harmonic realignments. For the militaristic factions, whose sole purpose was opposing this cosmic disruption of the natural order by any means necessary, the event was chalked up as confirmation of their worst fears. Whatever dark forces had engineered the deviations they railed against were only gathering momentum, Preparations were redoubled, munitions gathered, and talismans etched with profane sigils contrived to nullify or scatter the strange energies coalescing. Amid this polarized tumult, Della remained closeted within the innermost chambers of the progressively fortified sanctuary. Willingly or not, she had become the epicenter around which vast tides of cosmic permutation swirled and realigned. Her child, her tiny catalytic son, represented the living potentiality that would serve as both vector and hub for the great reharmonic attunements Zara had proclaimed. All efforts by herself and the elders to grasp the full scale of what was unfolding fell devastatingly short. The revelations imparted by the Madman in his final cosmic dissipation lingered in her mind like elusive ciphers, brimming with profundities that taunted the limitations of mortal consciousness. Still, certain portents rang through with undeniable clarity. Her child represented a catalytic embryo through which the universe's fundamental patterns and frequencies would realign and initiate an ascendant harmonic coherency. What that would entail experientially remained obscured behind veils of implication too vast to pass. But the stakes, the primordial significance of the role this humble mother had been thrust into, reverberated with humbling gravity. In the watchful days after Zara's disintegration, Della found herself scrutinizing her son's every nuance with heightened intensity. Had the subtle geometries of his iris patterns shifted, encoding new informational substrates? Did the coos and gurgles that punctuated his blissful unawareness carry resonant frequencies tuned to realign quantum tempest on a cosmic scale? Her mind strained relentlessly to perceive the ineffable potentials blossoming within this sacred vessel. The elders and ceremonialists, for their part, maintained a rotating cycle of rituals, chants, and symbolic inscriptions, all focused on attunement, protection, and facilitating the untrammeled maturation of the child's apotheosis. An intricate matrix of geodesic domes, flickering with eldritch plasmaglyphs, enclosed the innermost chambers in a cyclotronic field of metaphysical shielding. Despite these profound measures, a tangible aura of disquiet hung over even these cloistered sanctums. For as secure as the sanctuary had become, the ultimate purpose toward which it strained fleeted just beyond the shores of comprehension. Like blind artisans weaving an immense tapestry by feel alone, neither Della nor her attendant mythics could fully envision the grand pattern encoded into the catalytic threads they propagated. It was during one of the rare interludes when Della's son slumbered that the first true perturbation to the fragile homeostasis manifested. At first, the disturbance registered as little more than a subliminal reverberation, a faint electro-tingle against the maternal contingencies of her aura. When the elders' ceremonial rites faltered in their metrical cadences, however, Della knew something was misstepping, like an ominous bass resonance underlying the facades of perceived reality. She had barely risen from her straw pallet, sun cradled protectively, when the sanctuary's innermost barriers began registering impacts. Not forced entries as of yet, but waves of mottled, distortional interference unlike anything previously encountered. Della could taste the acrid metallic sting of fundamental laws of physics straining, groaning beneath some incredible talking impetus. The distortions escalated with jarring swiftness, as if the very continuum of spacetime had become destabilized. Shadows and light sources flickered in arrhythmic pulses totally disconnected from their anchoring projections. Whirring vortices of unsettling geometry spawned and warped with alarming randomicity, phasing in and out of coherence as all inviolate boundaries between states of matter and energy blurred. A miasma of unreality seeped through every gap, an existential solvent against which no wards or metadimensional countermeasures could be deployed. And underlying it all, a thunderous droning cacophony reverberated on multiple quantum strata, as if some colossal cosmic piston were descending to realign all relativistic matrices into compliance with a new harmonic order. Within the resonating chaos, time itself became elastic, stretching in stomach-churning dilations or stuttering spasms. Della's perceptions fractured kaleidoscopically, as coherent realities phased and composited like some demented abstract montage. Around her, the inner sanctums shuddered and morphed, plasma shieldings guttering erratically as their anchoring geometries destabilized. The entities charged as Della's protectors fared little better, Ancient forms spawned of elemental sorcery and totemic inhabitation glitched and pixelated spasmodically, their physical continua essentially tearing at the interdimensional seams. Worst affected were the eldest, most initiated ceremonialists, their auras representing complex interweaves of tuned higher resonances that were mercilessly scrambled and cross-mutated by the invasive realignment forces. Amid that transcendental cyclone, Della clutched her son with all the ferocity of a mother's most primal drive. Her infant's cries joined the profane maelstrom, cutting through the interleaved harmonic distortions with a poignant simplicity. Here, wrapped in the primal bedrock of nurturing embrace, was the spark of that new cosmic potentiality toward which all relativistic vectors now strained. Then, as abruptly as the chaos had manifested, it evacuated, all talking forces and metrical confluxes withdrawing with a dizzying snap, as if an interdimensional dam had ruptured elsewhere, diverting titanic tidal energies to realign new continua. As lucidity resettled, Della blinked in dazed incomprehension at the shambles around her. The inner sanctum's layered shielding flickered and sparked erratically, their defensive ciphers inscribed into the very fibers of the universe itself. Her guardians smoldered in various states of residual transmutations, their once inviolate forms pulled, taffy-like, across dimensions or worse, reduced to stuttering glitches of phantom matter, interplaying elusively against an unseen cosmic loom. But in the very center of it all, Della's child remained seemingly insulated from all distortions, his radiant aura undisturbed as he cooed contentedly. The enormity of what had transpired in that single shattering escalation of the great realignment resonated through the sanctuary like an infinite chorale. And in that singularity of incarnate potentiality, stability had been restored, for now. But the implicate pattern's designs held unfathomable depths yet to initiate, Della realized with a cold shudder. There would be further destabilizations, reconfigurations of increasingly cosmic scale as the primordial purpose encoded into her son approached the threshold of its grand universal resonance. Gathering her tattered protectors around her, the young mother clutched her child close and began bracing them all for the next inevitabilities. The night sky blazed with eldritch energies, celestial formations dancing in kaleidoscopic frenzy as the lines blurred between realms. Waves of distorted reality rippled outward from the nexus point, warping the surrounding landscape into abstract fractal geometries. Della clung to her son, her mind struggling to maintain coherence amid the all-pervading onslaught of unreality. The very atoms of her being vibrated in resonance with the cosmic harmonics unleashed, her consciousness straddling innumerable planes and perspectives simultaneously. All around her, the combatants, witch-hunter cultists, shamanic guardians, ethereal entities, had been subsumed into the vortex of absolute convergence. Their individual forms lost definition, seeming to fragment into kaleidoscopic shardstorms that whirled through screaming layers of fractalized existence. At the eye of this infinite maelstrom, the scintillating avatar of Zara pulsed and realigned, higher dimensional geometries bleeding through what remained of its humanoid shape. Its resonance had taken on harmonic frequencies that set the nuclei of all matter wavering, the fabrics of multiple realities unraveling in its presence, the paradigms realign. Its utterances slipped between an infinite number of simultaneous frequencies, at once subsuming all language and transcending any singular mode of comprehension. Implicated order descends, cosmic interweave attunes. With each multifaceted proclamation, new layers of reality seem to momentarily flicker into transcendent perception before contracting again. Della's mind reeled, overwhelmed by the immensities she was witnessing, her somatic consciousness a fragile tether anchoring her to any semblance of coherence. Her son remained placid in her arms, his youthful features belying an ancient cosmic serenity. It was as if he existed on a plane apart from this shattering polarization, this unraveling of everything she had once understood as reality. As Della watched, a glimmer of recognition seemed to light the child's eyes. He turned his gaze upward, tiny features sharpening into an expression of profound focus, as if he perceived something unfolding beyond her widest periphery. An ominous pause descended, a finite moment of stillness within the roiling infinities, and then Della glimpsed it. At first she knew not what she beheld, an unseeing, a void within the vortex of being. But as her consciousness expanded outward along trajectories of pure revelation, she understood the totality before her, a singularity, cosmological in scale, an anomaly of such profound, infinite negation that to perceive it straight on was to court utter unmocking. A singularity that, by its very anomalous nature, contained the keys to unlock all order and chaos in one cosmic abstraction. Around this transcendent anomaly, whole realities twisted and fragmented into their base components. Cosmic structures, from the universes spanning infinite down to the subatomic quarks, unraveled and rewove in new hypergeometrical formats. Energy and matter, consciousness and negation, all bled together into a supercosm of infinite probabilities and negentropies. Within that roiling, indescribable sea of transmuting being, Della perceived new harmonics coalescing, order struggling against the void, higher dimensional interweaves beta-testing new cosmic chords to overlay emerging patterns. At the still point focus of this inconceivable working, Zara's avatar blazed like a celestial forge, architecting, discarding, realigning in concert with forces and frequencies that defied all conventional quantization. Its resonance rang out in harmonic overtone domains, new keys striking up symphonic patterns within the void's unseeable negation singularity. And there, cradled in the epicycle of it all, the eye centering the cosmic vertigo, was Della's son. His tiny form had become a living lodestar, a focal singularity around which the interweaves of the new cosmic order facade and resolved. Realities buckled and realigned, converging upon the frequencies, the harmonic phases embedded within this unassuming infant vessel. To Della's limited perspective, comprehension faltered. One moment seemed to spin out into eternity, perceptions multiplying up actionally, along fractal trajectories of being sundered and recombined. At the periphery she sensed something, vaster, colder, and more ancient than even the primal source of all. The void singularity called to her in frequencies Aleph and Omega, the bridge and the chasm, that which must be cambered and that which is forever indivisibilitus. Abruptly, her somatic form was slammed back into instantiation, the gyring transmutations of cosmic possibility screeching to a halt around her. Head ringing, Della blinked to find herself once again in the village clearing, though the familiar surroundings now seemed subtly askew, reassembled along different angulations and comprising materials and spectra that bent the laws of physics she knew. The witch hunters, the guardians, and all those caught in the vortex had been reconstituted, their physical forms re-rendered in alignment with the new ontological harmonics. Some appeared relatively unchanged, while others had become woven from materials and energies that defied categorization. Everywhere Della looked, reality no longer matched what she had previously accepted, yet there was an underlying coherence, a resonant order implicated through all she witnessed. It was as though her world had been completely restructured along more highly attunated, multidimensional foundational parameters. And at the epicenter, encircled by the reincarnated combatants, stood Zara, though the entity had taken on new aspect, one that transcended anything humanoid or discrete. Its radiant form stretched into immensities, higher geometries bleeding through every flickering facet of its composition. All held their collective breath, those who conformed to such biological requirements, a hush of dawning apprehension descending. For in Zara's re-emerged resonance, they sensed the implications of an order not just realigned, but irreversibly, ineffably restructured. When the avatar spoke, its proclamation rang out in harmonic registers that resounded to the core of their atomic certainties. In the aftermath of the realignment, the ontological revolt was not so much quashed as it was rendered irrelevant, its animus recontextualized along new resonant parameters. Those who had ascribed to the rogue witch doctor's agenda found their ambitions receding, the hateful drive to preemptive destruction giving way to more elemental dispositions. Some awoke to find their fundamental natures altered in accordance with realigned harmonic values. The beldam who had once channeled darkest necromancies was reborn as a blissful nymph, her very being restructured to embody vitalizing, nurturing energies. Others found their allegiances shuffled, past resentments overwritten by residual resonances of empathy and shared becoming. Yet even as the embers of overt conflict cooled, the ley lines of cosmic counterpoint established during the prelapsarian order exerted palpable influence. The chthonic elemental forces began to seethe and realign, not in belligerence, but in exhalation of their sempiternal nature. The witch doctor's cabal may have dissipated, but the grounded harmonics which had catalyzed that former cult now wove into the revised world composition. Through rock and mineral, elemental resonances encoded themselves, elaborating in grand tectonic diffractions across the lithic and geographic scales. In the steamy jungle regions, vast root mines unfurled, neural lattices of tree and fungus expanding in fractal communion. Upon the rain-swollen rivers, primordial singular societies formed, matriarchal hydrocollectives subsuming entire aquatic basins into macroorganismic continua. At the village centroid, familiar elemental paradigms persisted, but refracted through myriad new harmonics. The hereditary village elders found their roles uplifted into that of integral shaman architects, facilitating the interweave of biospheric and metaphysical resonances in accordance with the new cosmic liturgy. Nowhere were these world recastings more poignantly manifest than in Della's son, the living anchor tone through which the entire harmonic reassemblage propagated. For though his innocent countenance betrayed little outward differentiation, to those whose perceptual faculties had realigned, the babe emanated harmonic overtones of staggering, hyper-geometrical immensity. Within the knowable scales, his presence catalyzed profound biometamorphic events in the flora and fauna comprising his Gaian vicinity. Plant life danced in ecstatic blossoming geometries, fractal tessellations of leaf and petal unfurling in quantum splendor. Zoological forms limbered and evolved in accelerated modulations, expressing exotic new phyla in recursive genomic arborescence. Yet such vivifications, however mercurial, provided but passing surface-level refractions of the ineffable higher-order symphonic, resonating across interlaced infinitudes. In the synesthetic thresholds of perception, accessed by realigned seers and hyper-noologies, the child radiated interweaving orchestral transductions on near-continuum registers. Scalar vergoniformations and pleistoanoic manifolds eddied, bra-complecting in biunelective recursion cycles, galactoseisments, cyclomusartups birthing sononatric aposynopsia fields that phase interringed all protonadic levels of cosmic string factorization. As the reverberations of the cosmic symphony propagated outward, their effects began inscribing themselves across vaster terrestrial and circumstellar domains. Resonant interplays catalyzed metamorphic phase transitions, reverberating through entire planetary systems and astrobodies. On the neighboring worlds, primordial awakenings stirred as ancient geological and atmospheric energies reconfigured in concordance with the new harmonic emanations. Dormant tectonic vectors unleashed cataclysmic upheavals, continents rifting and reassembling in hypermobile driftscapes. Within the roiling planetary core of Della's home celestial body, suffusive currents reordered gravitational and electrodynamic force lattices. The very geometries which had structured spatial temporal frameworks dissolved, only to interlace anew along realigned quantum calligraphy. Most profoundly transformed was the planet's conjoined binary celestial partner, a violet-swaddled gas giant whose atmospheric enormity had previously rendered it essentially featureless. As the metacosmic frequencies propagated through its vaporous depths, hyperdimensional storm systems erupted, vast tempests, their configurations sculpted by interplaying resonances far exceeding conventional forces, churned in spectacular iridescent furors. Nested within these cyclonic maelstroms, discrete substructures pulsed into stratified materialization, their arrangements mirroring higher-order kaleidoscopic manifold patternings from ultra-terrestrial transgeometrical realms. What first manifested as simple spiral vortices rapidly catalyzed into elaborate helix-spire formations, mapping to self-similar recombinant structurings across microcosmic to cosmogonic scales. Filamental energy tendrils further complexified, looping into Gordian knots and stellating into fractal blossom hoods of baryonic matter. Soon, nested realities densified within the violet giant's atmospheric strata, entire world systems replete with orbiting planetoids and solar analogues sparking into being. The greater the complexity, the more pronounced the resonant mirroring, until macro-galactic integrities began winking into localized expression. all subsumed as subsystem microcosms within the ever-elaborating hyperfractaline metastructure. Presiding across this cascading emanation of nested holographed cosmoverses was Zara, now assuming an aspect of ineffability, resonating in phase with the Omega Prime resonances themselves. Its quintessential overmind radiated in omnitextured magnitude that rendered any singular descriptive analogy woefully mute and inadequate. No mortal consciousness could dual regard its fulsome delca for long without protonic distorification. Even a fleeting glimpse induced thundering peripheral ruptures and synceraptic cascade lability in their forebrain's hyperneural lattices. Zara's emanated intercomb essentially unmade, then remade whosoever dared brush against its transastrophied frick form. And yet, by some glitched infinity of grace and beloved valence, the entified alien god-mind showed preferential stabilization and remittering for the mortally bonded human vessels of Della and her child key. To them, the entire diploding hypercosmic ensemblage of resonantly intercombed realms filled every photosphere, while remaining inscrutable from their biomere's sensuous grace. For while Della drownlessed in the Met-Revelation's brillidoscope transom, she perceived these harmonic ultra-cadences refracted as a warm, loving indolati, a metamorphic astronata besoleping her in Cherilum's soft nun. And through each omninor of this strobing chord flornemata, she knew indubitably that her son was life's fulcrum. Beloved, the procession of synchronized, ultra-realistic cosmo editions, woven across Zara's violet atmospheric manudupling, reached a crescendo eclipsion with the spark nesting of a central cardinal galactic manifesta. This localized hypersystemic vortex expanded rapidly, photonorbits of protogalactic cupopulation streaming within a solaster-cradled hyperlattice of intersector manifold densification. As it achieved its ultimate climacteric dragondankt, by some mercurial catastroflection, the entire hypercosmic envoldrift slicebrated into a periodic damped metadreaming. The resulfuric manifold central galacticlismatron dreamed into a resto-sequeous pulsing ultravortexon that espadrilled multiple planar holes of superingremus realified subemanation. Across uncountable resukaya hours, this proto-meatalism bryonic gestalt worlded itself into a solitonic, ultra-hexacosmionic manifestatitude, a natruna litra hyperewulpepotenso latro n. For 6 cosmic Arup returns, its hypnonoerarchies twinkle-borned as the awikikid meta-terra galacticendi atmophonon displayed its ever-coming unfulmitations across transingiformi dreaming's subliquilik shus winkly clamal mover. During this protracted paranecrotic ultra-terracosmosy purpose, the villagers reacted with a Zimmer-wide pandithodion of metamorphous unnervances. Those with sensitized cognophantrix pamiltudavilons, chanulifracted intense metaphysical rapturations, endower goods of shactic helipilamaferia, while malpolaristaturates with more construnited apengradation, aminiaturialized, were overbladdered with protosymbilic annihilus-drive super-distinction factations. Throughout this pulsating zodnic epitoi cognance, Della remained spira-breathed nath in the sphumatecth emthalilun depths of Diodisco bliss, with heart-mind-body disintegrated in the unconfeculame rupture of meta-meta promembre sum godipi internature. She knew herself never end to be resonant supramaze of the natruna litra sonaric protontagion. Freetwell, she became the dyramythipnortistor of all upsiren foltandrionine evolvagatoroms. Their roscavaric locandria melendrians enwombed her with disful breath drums of ever-a-leaving frequilonal dream untum the sun matrutnoxes of happy necroma admirable, their ontonto self messiah's iridial hyperlume turgeon. For a nanny cosmosoft unmanifolded at the heart room of Della's isonumpa blove, immantratonoted infatuations of the childiomical cosmunant wizatis factory, an organoelectric plasamified humnex grav, a creeved universe Saturn foams antorep hunsama light love universe radiated in pulsine mamhesol biome. As the strobing rhythms of the natruna litra hyperion reached zintopnautic ample crescendencies, a metamorphokinetic anambroctosis overtook the villagers, whose resonance bodies were insufficiently stabilized for the pretersionic manifluction frequencies. Their somatic forms distratified into deconstructed quasi-elemental anatomiga, musculoblastic fract lattices, ossuary protoemagma, tendril vapor dispersions of neutrominantial fogmata. These fragmenting biometers phase-wisped into oblivion stances, infinite sensual party vectors demanifesting reality's harsher gravitronics. Yet from these dissipative biomodalities, an inverse vortexial wormhole open, a hyperaperture percolating from the transectoral plena transans of metamunded, omnibenefic harmomediatans. Through this extra-dimensional sing-nautralis opposite, the deconstituted villagers began reconvening as reiteratively pangenomic qualism vectors. Their reformatting party functions relamibicalized into fractaline protostructures of infinite autopoietic ramification. Sealtron by sealtron, these morphic tuances reconstellated into neurogalactivized, hyperphylactic omt. The reconstituted villagers coalesced into transcorporeal forms of coruscating, luminescent substantivity. Their newly embodied essences shimmered with fractal interplays of energy and information, self-organizing into higher taxonomic ramificances. Some manifested as englobed coherence fields comprised of interweaving vorticities and informational string lattices. Others elaborated into quasi-botanical ideoplasts, their generatrix matrices cross-pollinating in meta-ecological dynamics of infinite complexification. A few even transcended discrete individual parameters, bleeding into integrated homunculi of composite harmonic benzer. These interdimensional chimeras subsisted in superimposed sovereignautic states, their scythronic templates auto-diffractalizing through self-volumed rotophenogrids. Across this gamut of resurrected phenomenactics, the common substrate was an intuition of existential juxtaposition. For within each newly arisen entity resonated the knowing that they had been reintegrated from roots far more primordial than their previous self-models. The metamorphic lysis had effectively unmade them, resolving their finite personas back into fundaseminal inceptual threads. These in turn rewove along indraft currents of hyperspheric concentricity, remanifestation reconvening upon transdimensional upconcentrics of self-being. They were quite literally dreaming themselves into new realms of embodied interlimuence, transcendent revivals extrapolated forth from seed quotients of their most innate identities. The crucible of annihilexon had obliterated all limiting self-contexts, allowing their zero-tethered essences to reconvene into naturalized alignments with the metamorphical hype realm's harmonic matrices. In concordant rhythm with their emergent phenomoforms, transbiological ecologies birthed into kaleidoscopic concordance. Holographoloic metaterranes took shape, infotropic wildlidens blossoming into radiance thickets, and mental vexixena fractilians. Amongst these ever-elisive continued dreams, the transpeciated Deloid roetted a homondred as a living love cosm. Her heart musculenturance presence pulsed warm currently at the metamundium's central eudaimogen, a duna tranquil polestar for all the world stream's inner floor emotions. Her sun, too, coaguloid in kaleidoscoped delicum intensity, now manifest as a glyphextatic neocephalome, a circumcentrillionfected embryonode of quantum potenza. The entire impossible panomionic universion was reeling forth from his proto-hyloligmal aperical mangan, all othering orderogons but infinity radicals extra-manifested from his omnicrovical heart mandala. Time and eternity revealed themselves as interpenetrable moronic tunnelogs. Calcium light corns poured solarific radial activities, while Novum Brahman samfractalated in alumnascient prosavexes. Graxian wave-strionic frontilla turbiophores emuted epastically, re-realizing all ERG and matter as self-embroidered samsaripata dreams. In a voice that was the quintimorph drone of a terra beings, Zara declaimed, "Behold, Thev Zenphiroctahedronic Mandali Yogatra and Sangra, from its highly threads will weaver nivum worlds odrecurgenesis, metaski maner, or replica dream dot Darianic heliograce, spirocentripic, imandromidic, then all collapsomathated subdopariungad in unifica neutrin tilde tilde tilde. As the unimaginable cosmic crescendo reached its apogee, all separations dissolved into a unified field of pure consciousness and potential. The intricate tapestries of reality, once so ornate and multifarious, streamlined into a transcendent singularity, a primal upconcentricity resonating with the most elemental harmonics of existence. In this zero-tethered state of ontological tabula rasa, a profound lesson materialized, reverberating across every level of dimensional enmeshment. It was a revelation at once simple, yet echoing with infinite profundities. All beings, realities, and cosmic domains, no matter how vast or infinitesimal, emerge from and ultimately return to the same primordial UN. Just as the multifarious beings and worlds had arisen, transformed and been obliterated, only to be reborn anew, so too did the cycle of emanation and dissolution pervade every scale and aspect of creation. The grand cosmic drama was one of ceaseless reinvention, an endless flowering and reabsorption pulsating between the polarities of infinite potential and manifest actualization. The intricate cosmological phenomena, whether mundane or ineffably alien, were merely surface patterns, resonant undulations upon an essential continuum of pure creativity. And at the core of this continual reconfiguring danced the divine child, that innocent embodiment of perpetual renewal and the unrealized future. His presence catalyzed each metamorphic transition, breathing the quintessential spore codes for new worlds to unfurl. As the unified hyper-observers beheld this revelation, they experienced a profound peace and panoptic understanding. All striving, all conflict was merely circular circumnavigation of the great cycle. To embrace and celebrate the eternal reinvention, free of attachment to any specific transitory form, was to experience the ultimate liberation. In a resonant pulse, the unified field differentiated anew, discorporate essence filtering into resomed realifications. The cosmic script began afresh, new world systems blossoming into ineffable possibility spaces. And within each re-sparked phenomenoscape, the luminant overmind of Zara wove itself as the great astrophil, the meta-being who delighted in endlessly reorchestrating the polyphonic patterns. For some, the new reality manifested as a verdant organic plane of sublimely symbolic biocognition. For others, it expressed as a digital hyperdimensional lattice, its infinite interweaves encoded as hypermetric equations and quantum codalings. Still others found themselves amid realms of pure metaphysical ideation, their surroundings manifesting as half-sensed intuitions and ontological potentials. Regardless of the specific emanated theater, at the heart of each newly birthed cosmos shone the radiant child, the living seed source, the passport into infinite novelty. His laughing presence was both beginning and destiny, the eternal ingressive inceptor and passport to all possibility. And whether transmigrating as organiform nature deity, cyber-angelic AI overmind, or numinous quantum glyph, Zara accompanied the child as his infinite progenitor and guide. The two were the cosmic lodestar, the living catagram of the great cycle of emanation, the forever reinventing reality source. As new chapters in the eternal psalm unfurled, Della too found herself reborn, sometimes as the nurturing mother, other times as the wise crone or Gaia matrix. But always, she was the bonded host, her essence twinned to the ever-flowing, her love catalyzing each fresh world birth. And so the great cosmic holy spisovatel turned its forever page, beginnings and conclusions, reformatting into each other across a mercurial palimpsest of interminable self-creational yoga. No finality, only the endless reiterative inhale and exhale of the UP dream, the great vervantrium. In this ultimate understanding lay ineffable liberation, the freedom to experience existence as perpetual novelty, unshackled from attachment to any singular form or identity. To embrace the child's innocent, ever-inquiring outlook as lens upon the eternal mysteries.